Today we're going to show you how to change the inner door glass on your range, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Let me show you how we do it. Now, to do this repair, we will need to remove the oven door from the range. So we're simply going to open it to about the broil position. Then we're going to lift up and pull back at the bottom of those hinges. And just kind of rotate that hinge right out of the oven body. And then we can take the door and set it on a suitable work surface and do our repair. Now, to disassemble the door, we're going to begin by removing the 2 screws on either side on the outer edge at the bottom. Now, that will allow us to remove the side trim pieces. Now next we'll remove these 2 screws closer to the center on the bottom. And that will allow us to remove the bottom trim. And we can set that aside. Then we can carefully lift that door up while holding the outer door glass against the frame. And then we'll just lay that door on its back. And we can slide that outer door glass away and set it aside. Now next we're going to remove the 2 screws that were below that outer door glass, and they secure that top trim piece in place. So remove those and then lift the top trim, slide it up and lift it away. Now next we're going to remove the remaining 2 screws at the bottom that secure the hinges to the inner door panel. Now, to make lifting that hinge out a little bit easier, we're going to remove these 2 spacers at the top. There's one for the face of that top trim piece and one to support the top of it as well. So remove that single Phillips screw. And take note of how that spacer fits on there. And then the top spacer has a little hook on it that fits into a slotted opening on the top of that hinge. So lift that as well. And lift up on the bottom of the hinge and pivot it away. And you'll see where there is a hook on the front of that hinge that fits into that slotted opening on the door panel. And then that opening is where this clip will fit into position. So do that for both sides and then set them aside. Now next we're going to lift that heat shield away from the door panel, and then we'll set that aside. Now, if the door glass that you're replacing is still in one piece, you would simply lift the old one out and discard it. And if you're replacing the one that is closest to the oven, we'll next need to remove the screws across the bottom that hold that frame in place. So next we'll just remove that insulation. And then we're going to remove the screws and clips that hold that frame and glass into position. So then we can lift that frame away from the glass and set it aside. And if your old glass is still in one piece, just use caution and lift it away from the gasket and discard it. So we'll next take the new pane of glass and make sure that it's clean, and then lower it into position and center it up between the spacers. And if need be, you can clean that frame of any food spills that may have gotten on it. And then we'll position that over the glass. Make sure that the flanges on the edge of that frame fit out over the edge of the glass. And then you can reinstall the retaining clips. And then tighten all of those securely. Then we can reinstall the insulation. And we'll next just lower that other glass panel into position. Make sure it sits inside the edges of that frame. And then we can next put the heat shield back in position. And just make sure that we have the insulation pushed back out of the way. And center it up, making sure that the bottom of that heat shield fits in underneath the lip at the bottom of the inner door panel. Now we can reinstall the hinges. So begin by tucking that little hook into the slotted opening at the top. Lower the hinge down into position. Install a single screw in the bottom to hold it there, and that'll be the screw that's on the inside edge at the bottom. We'll next reinstall that top spacer clip, making sure that we hook that little tab into the rectangular opening. And we'll set that spacer on top of it, and then install the screw to secure them in place. Make sure we keep them square, and then we'll repeat that for the opposite side. And we'll install the spacer on the opposite side. Again, making sure that we hook that little tab into that rectangular opening. And then position the spacer on top and secure it with a screw. Next will be the top trim piece. And just make sure that this top edge hooks across the face of the inner door panel. Slide it into position and replace the two screws. Next will be the outer door glass. And you can take this opportunity as you install that glass to clean that bottom edge, because typically there will be some food soil that will accumulate there. So we'll just use a razor knife, scrape off any of the hard stuff. And then we'll take a little bit of glass cleaner and clean that up. So next we're going to put the bottom trim piece into position. We'll slide that over the lower edge of that glass. And then install the two screws in the center to hold that in position. Now next will be the side trim pieces. So again, we're going to make sure that we tuck that little offset in underneath the edge of that top trim piece, and then the top side of that side trim will slide underneath the outer door glass, and then it should rotate into position underneath the bottom trim piece, and then we can install the two screws that secure it in place. And then that bottom screw actually secures the hinge as well. And then repeat the same for the opposite side. And now we're ready to reinstall the door on the range. Now when reinstalling the door, I suggest that you push these hinges into the broil position first. And simply just push them until they lock in that broil position. Now with the hinges locked down, we're just going to slide those into that slotted openings. And keep the door as upright as possible until we have it all the way back. And you'll feel them drop down into position. Just check the gap at the top, make sure that it's equal and that the door opens and closes easily. And our repair is complete.